We took a look at regular trig functions, and sometimes we need to use what's called an inverse trig function, and we use these when we want to know the angle. So we've been dealing with all these different types of function families, and the objective is usually to get x by itself. So when our variable, or our x, is an angle, we're going to have to use these inverse functions, and all you need to know for sort of the Algebra 2 type application is that inverse functions are what undo trig functions, just like logs will help us undo exponential functions, and raising things and making them exponents will help us unravel log functions, and squaring will help us undo square root functions. Inverse trig functions undo regular trig functions. Now, there are 3 buttons on your calculator, and they look like sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, and tangent to the -1. Now these are not on the regular buttons. If you look, they're just behind. And since we're not going to learn how to do this by hand, I want you to be familiar with where these are so that you can evaluate these in the calculator. And always remember to check that you're in degree mode or radian mode, depending on what you want. So let's look at an example. Let's take this triangle, label its angle as 30 degrees, and label one side 2 and the hypotenuse 4. Now, without labeling any more information, let's look at this angle. What trig function is going to relate our angle, our opposite side, and our hypotenuse? Well, that function is the sine, and we say that the sine of 30 degrees is 2 divided by 4, or 1/2. Now, if you'll check this in your calculator using the regular sine button, not the inverse sine button, you'll see that it's true. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. I'll give you a second, so pause the video and do that now. Okay, you've checked that we're on the right track. So let's do this problem again. But this time, let's pretend, just pretend, that if we label everything as it is, the side 2 and the side is 4, that we don't know what x is, okay? So, pretending that we don't know what x is. Now, if you'll notice, these 2 triangles are the same, so, yeah, we know that x is 30, but, we don't know what x is. So, this time we're going to be forced to say that the sine of x equals 2 divided by 4. Now, what's hanging out with the x that we need to get rid of? Well, the word sine. Now, we can't just divide by a word. So, what is going to undo a trig function is an inverse trig function. So this time, we want to take the sine inverse of both sides, just like that. Now I know that sine inverse is going to undo sine, leaving me with x on the left, and this equals the sine inverse of 2 divided by 4, whatever that may be. Now, with the calculator set in degree mode, that's going to be 30 degrees, and as you can see, from our first one, from the left side of this example, sine of 30 is 1/2, and sine inverse of 1/2 gives us that the value of x would equal 30. So it looks like inverse functions will give us angles if we just put those side ratios into them. So, main ideas. For regular trig functions, you put in an angle and get out some sides. For inverse functions, you put in some sides and it gives you the angle. It's a way to figure out an angle if you don't otherwise know it. Now, really briefly, answer these 3 problems using inverse functions. So they work just like the last one. You want to set up a trig function that relates the angle, which you don't know, to the 2 sides that you do know. Now what I would like you to try to do is don't figure out that 3rd side. Remember, you know what the opposite side is, you know what the hypotenuse is, or you may know what an adjacent side is, and so use the appropriate trig function to relate that. Like sine relates opposite hypotenuse, tangent relates opposite and adjacent, and cosine relates adjacent hypotenuse. Work these 3 out, and you can get x by itself even if you don't have a calculator. Just go ahead and write the expression on the other side of the equals sign.